Hi, I'm Jonathan Parker and I'm here with Ignite Tuition presenting on Good Night and Good Luck, which presumably will be your Module C prescribed text. What I'm talking about in this video is context, how to discuss it with respect to Good Night and Good Luck, and why it is important to discuss. So you might be wondering, with a critical study of literature, why it is so important that you discuss context in great depth with respect to your prescribed text. The reason why that's the case is, with a critical study of literature, what you're trying to do is evaluate why, at the time of the text construction, it was considered valuable, why it has a certain textual integrity, and why still today in our own society, which in the case of Good Night and Good Luck is nearly 15 years after it was produced, it still has an enduring resonance. Now, what we're thinking about with Good Night and Good Luck isn't just one context, and it's not just two contexts necessarily either. There are three contextual frameworks at play here. We have 1953 in the United States, which is where the film is set, 2005 in America, which is where it's made, and also today's context when we're trying to evaluate why it has that resonance to us today. So what we're going to first have a look at is 1953 in America and what was happening at this particular point in time that you can bring into your essay, that you can use to demonstrate the research and the critical thinking that you have done about the place of this text within history, both literary history and time itself. So where you can start to bring in some of this contextual information is often in the second sentence of a body paragraph. After you have set up your argument for that paragraph in a topic sentence, sometimes good to back that up with a bit of contextualization. One of these formats of contextualization you can use is by discussing what was happening in the 50s in America. The thing that is the umbrella for all of our contextual knowledge here is the Cold War. And many of you will know that the Cold War is this little metonym that gets used to describe the period from the end of World War II to the fall of the Berlin Wall, typically. So from about the mid-40s to the early 90s. What characterizes the Cold War is this contest between democracy, which is codified in the West, and authoritarianism, which is represented in the East. This contest, this battle between capitalism and communism, in which supposedly there was not a bullet fired, although there were many proxy wars that shot off from this. One of the key emotional feelings in this zeitgeist is what you might call a nuclear paranoia, this constant fear that the entirety of human history, human culture, your family, your livelihood could be obliterated with the press of a button. And within this context, this political fear manifests in very personal ways. It influences the ability for individuals to have agency over their own life when their life is just subject to political control and the whims of particularly a man in a faraway office with his finger on the nuclear button. And with that in mind, we can also think about this time as a very hyper-masculine era, one in which we can perceive the Cold War to be really a tussle between powerful men. Now, as an offshoot of this, with respect to Good Night and Good Luck, we really need to delve into Mccarthyism, and it's almost a non-negotiable that you dig into that in your essay. It's something that's probably going to have to be there in the introduction so that you can signal to the marker, you know what you're talking about, you know the contextual parameters that this film is operating within. So Senator Joseph McCarthy was a senator for Wisconsin from 1947 to 1957, so a 10-year period there. And in 1950 he gained notoriety when he claimed he had a list of people in the State Department who were secretly members of the Communist Party. This was part of what's called the Second Red Scare, where red is a symbol for communism. And there was something similar happening in Australia at the time where there was fear that covertly, clandestinely, there were communists infiltrating our society, infiltrating our government. Here it was called the Reds Under the Beds scare. In America, you had something called the Subversive Activities Control Board, which was investigating potential communist activities. And many people, like Edward Murrow, the protagonist of Good Night and Good Luck, thought these sorts of things to be unconstitutional, thought that this contravened this foundational American myth where all men are created equal and are endowed with unalienable rights, and looking at the Constitution and the protection of civil liberties there, the freedom of speech, the freedom of assembly. So there was some dissent that, as we see in the film, is confused for disloyalty from members of the public against McCarthy's witch hunts. What we also have to consider here, which is very closely related to McCarthyism, is HUAC, or the House Un-American Activities Committee. And what HUAC's purpose was to investigate treasonous behaviours, especially amongst citizens who were employed by the American government, but also were intent on investigating private citizens as well. One of the most famous activities that was pursued by HUAC was the Hollywood Blacklist in 1947, where there was a list of a number of artists who were banned from participating within the entertainment industry. So all of this climate adds up to a state of intense paranoia, of fear of your fellow person, fear that they might either be a communist or that they might be someone who is going to rat you out for your political leanings. And this is the climate that Clooney depicts in his film, but it's not the society in which the film is set, and that's an important distinction. Because what you need to discuss isn't just McCarthy's America, you also need to think about America in 2005. Why does Clooney make this film about this period in history more than 50 years earlier in 2005? And that's central to our critical study here. A close study might not go into that much detail on this, but a critical study, we are trying to evaluate the place of this work of literature within the canon, within literary history, needs you to consider why Clooney would make this film at the point in time that he did. So what we need to think about with early 21st century America is the impact that 9/11 had on the broader community there. Now, I probably don't need to go into detail about what 9/11 was, because we've all grown up in a post-9/11 world in a way. But the reason behind Clooney's decision to make this film about the press and about paranoia after 9/11 is because there was a lot of resurgent nationalistic fervour and a fear of otherness, similar to during the Cold War in America at the time, manifested in a lot of hate crimes against people of Middle Eastern appearance. So you have, again, this struggle and fear about the security of the nation, a genuine fear about the security of the nation that sometimes manifests in some insidious ways. So there are some parallels that we can make between these two contexts here. One thing that was pursued after 9/11 was the Patriot Act. And what the Patriot Act permitted, a piece of legislation, was wiretapping and surveillance against citizens without warrants. And again, similar to in McCarthy's time, a lot of people perceive this to be a contravention of civil liberties, of values like privacy, of independence, of freedom of speech that the American nation in many respects was founded upon. Another thing to consider parallel to this is the revelations of what happened at Abu Ghraib. And this was when in 2004 CBS News published these very graphic images of an American army base in which Iraqi citizens had been captured and tortured and subject to various degrees of physical and sexual abuse. And what it really illustrates is the power of the media to impact on the public discourse, the power of media to inform and educate, which is what Murrow in the film extols. So we need to think about both of these contexts and how we can bring both into our essay. And so what it might be useful to do is to perhaps talk about 1950s America in one paragraph and talk about 2000s America in another paragraph, but it might also be more sophisticated to weave them together and think whenever you mention something about the 1950s context with respect to Goodnight and Luck, make sure you make a parallel, make that connection to what's happening in Clooney's time that inspires him to make this film. So just to recap, I think it's useful to try and aim to bring in context with this critical study into each of these 3 body paragraphs that you'll likely be using, and to signal both of these contextual frames in your introduction. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more from us, then click subscribe and there'll be plenty more videos on Goodnight and Good Luck as well.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you do like the content, subscribe to our channel and we'll have more videos coming your way.
That's right, guys. Thanks for watching. And please make sure you check out our online resource database. We've had a team of state rank achievers and heads of English put these together for you, covering everything from essay structures and examples all the way through to craft of writing and comprehension skills. So check them out at ignitehse.com.au, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.